A little note before we begin. This isn't your usual audiobook. The words won't match the text word for word. I've rewritten it, mostly sentence by sentence, using more simplistic language that's easier to digest. Some people love to read a book precisely because they enjoy the author's unique style, the rhythm, tone, and language of a certain era. My aim here isn't to replace or diminish that original flavour, but to make the ideas easier to digest for modern listeners who might find the older style harder to follow. I've done my best to stay faithful to the spirit and rhythm of Alan's writing, but simplifying the language to help the messages come through more clearly. None of the key ideas, golden nuggets, or memorable quotes have been lost. I've also added my own reflections, wherever I saw meaningful connections between the author's ideas and insights I've gained from other teachers, other material, other books, or my own life experience. Sometimes I'll point this out directly and mention where the ideas come from. Other times, you might not even notice I've added them because they blend naturally with the flow of the text. So you could call this audiobook a faithful modernization and a personal interpretation in one. Of course, these are only my interpretations, so they may not reflect exactly what the author intended. Still, I hope they serve as helpful bridges and bring fresh insights. As you listen, some of these ideas may seem to contradict what you've learned from other methods or modalities, but there's no need to throw out the material you've studied before. Just set it aside for now, as best as you can, while you explore this audiobook. I highly recommend that you suspend comparison and judgment, if only for a little while. Once you've had time to draw your own conclusions, you can return to everything else you've learned and see where this fits. Contradiction is inevitable when you compare different paths or traditions of growth. But true freedom comes from releasing all attachments and aversions to the world and to every school of thought, no matter how true it is. This doesn't invalidate other viewpoints, it just allows you to see them from a place of greater clarity. When it comes to self-discovery, the more you can embrace multiple possibilities, the deeper and more heartfelt your understanding becomes. You don't need to become a mystic or shave your head and head off to the Himalayas to connect with the spiritual side of life or to gain some control over your circumstances. What is necessary is that you don't reject everything to do with spirit just because it sounds too airy-fairy or religious. Stay open. Let the ideas speak to you in their own way. Occasionally, I'll bring up more scientific perspectives, ways of understanding these ideas through psychology, neuroscience, or physics, to help demystify the text and show that much of what's written here isn't wishful thinking, but a real and observable science of mind and being. Now let's dive into the book. Out from the Heart by James Allen. Foreword. Confucius once said, "Perfecting yourself is the foundation of all progress and moral growth." This truth is as deep and far-reaching as it is simple and practical. There is no surer path to real knowledge, and no better way to help the world than by improving yourself. There's also no greater work or higher science than that of self-perfection. Whoever studies how to become free from faults, strives to keep a pure heart, and aims to develop a calm, wise and clear mind, is engaging in the highest task a person can take on, one that shows itself in a peaceful, happy and beautiful life. Chapter 1. The Heart and the Life. As the heart is, so is the life. What's inside is always becoming what's outside. Nothing stays hidden forever. What's concealed only waits for its time. It matures and eventually appears. Seed becomes tree, becomes blossom, becomes fruit. This is the pattern of all creation. From the condition of a person's heart comes the conditions of their life. Thoughts grow into actions, and actions bear the fruit of character and destiny. Now I have some notes I've added here. I notice people with OCD who struggle with ideas like nothing stays hidden forever. They're scared if they have one negative thought, it will spiral, and then it's only a matter of time before something terrible happens. Or there's deeply religious people who are stuck with a deep feeling of guilt, that feel like the universe is run by some moral scorekeeper who's keeping a track of their every mistake in the past, and some inevitable punishment is on the way. The idea that nothing remains unrevealed can sound like a spiritual surveillance camera, and it can make their paranoia worse, and then they miss out on the skills and the powers of the mind that can really change their life. So it's important you put those fears to rest. From my perspective, it's just stating the simple fact that you are continually building and so externalizing in your life conditions most akin to the suppressed thoughts and emotions that you entertain or refuse to let go, either consciously or unconsciously. Your inner state, when unhealed, continues to show itself through the tone of your life until it's brought into awareness and loved back into wholeness. It just means healing will not be denied, goodness will not be denied. The universe is simply too loving to let wounds stay buried forever. It will keep nudging what's hidden into the light, not to shame you, but to free you. Here's a comforting quote. The past is never held against you, only continued by you. Every moment is a fresh moment. You can revise it by changing the state that you occupy now. You are under no obligation to be the same person you were even 5 minutes ago. And for any religious people listening who struggle with sin and punishment the most, I'd like to offer you this new perspective. People claim that the existence of both good and evil proves that the devil lives alongside God, and that evil is a real thing in itself, a temptation placed in the path of both the righteous and the sinner. But God and the devil could not have collaborated in creating humanity. It defies logic. Only one could be responsible. If the devil were man's creator, then God could not dwell within him, nor could goodness. Everything would be evil. If, however, God is the creator, then man's true nature is good. Yet, being free, he may occasionally fall into error while seeking truth. Now, with that being said, I'd like you to reason this final point with me. Most religions agree that God is the single creator and we, his children, are part of this creation. If God created everything, then that would mean he created evil, temptation, sin, and hell. And if hell was created as punishment for sinners, he would have to know in advance who would end up there. That would mean God created temptation, created people unable to resist it, and then pre-condemned them to eternal suffering. Clearly, there is nothing kind or loving about a God who brings disease, pain, poverty, and suffering to his children, just as there is nothing good about a God who creates evil only to punish those who fall for it. All of this is clearly ridiculous. Just ideas created by man. But here's the crucial truth. In human life, what we believe becomes what we experience. If someone believes in evil, they experience evil. If they believe in disease, they experience disease. If they believe in hell and the devil, they suffer the mental torment those beliefs create every time they think they've fallen from what they call grace. Jesus revealed that the universe is ruled by a God of love, whose very essence is tolerance and forgiveness. Before this, humanity lived in fear of a vengeful God. What Jesus taught was simple. We never need to carry the burden of our mistakes with us. When he said, "Take up thy bed and walk, thy sins are forgiven thee, and go and sin no more," he was showing that we do not need to fear the consequences of error unless we keep holding them in our minds. Guilt grows like a snowball, attracting more suffering, but it only persists if we insist on carrying it. So forget that you've made mistakes. Stop dwelling on regrets. The universe isn't run by a moral scorekeeper, it is animated by love itself. Now, back to the book. Life is always unfolding from within and showing itself outwardly. Thoughts born in the heart eventually reveal themselves through words, actions, and the things a person accomplishes. Just as water flows from a hidden spring, a person's life flows from the secret depths of their heart. Everything they are and do begins there. Everything they will become also begins there. Sorrow and happiness, suffering and joy, fear and hope, hatred and love, ignorance and understanding are nowhere but in the heart. They are inner states of mind. Man is the keeper of his heart, the watcher of his thoughts, the guardian of his inner fortress of life. As such, he can be careful and diligent, or careless and negligent. He can guard his heart more attentively, watch and purify his mind more earnestly, and prevent unrighteous thoughts from taking root. And this is the path of enlightenment and peace. On the other hand, he can live loosely, carelessly and thoughtlessly, ignoring the duty of rightly ordering his inner life, and this is the path of self-delusion and suffering. When a person realizes that all of life flows from the mind, the way to blessedness opens before them. They will discover that they have the power to rule their mind and shape it according to their highest ideals. They will walk steadfastly upon the path of thought and action which are altogether excellent. To them, life will become beautiful and sacred, and sooner or later he will put to right all evil, confusion and suffering, because it's impossible for anyone to fall short of freedom, enlightenment and peace who keeps constant, watchful care over the gateway of their heart. Chapter 2. The nature and power of mind. The mind is the ruler of life. It creates and shapes circumstances, and it also receives the results of its own actions. It contains the power to both make illusions and to perceive reality. The mind is the weaver of destiny. Thought is the thread. Your actions are the warp and woof, and the finished cloth is your character, woven on the loom of life. The mind dresses itself in the clothes of its own making. Man, as a mental being, possesses all the power of mind and has unlimited choice. He learns through experience, and he can accelerate or retard that learning. He is not randomly bound, but he has bound himself in many ways, and having bound himself, he can, when he chooses, liberate himself. He can become bestial or pure, ignorant or noble, foolish or wise, all by his own choice. He can, through repeated practice, form habits, and he can, through renewed effort, break them off. He can surround himself with illusions until truth is completely lost, and he can destroy each of those illusions until truth is entirely recovered. His possibilities are endless. His freedom is complete. It is the nature of the mind to create its own conditions and to choose the state in which it will dwell. It also has the power to alter any condition, to abandon any state. It does this continually, gathering knowledge of each state through repeated choice and exhaustive experience. The inward processes of thought form the total of a person's character and life. Man can modify these processes by applying his will and effort. The bonds of habit, weakness, and wrongdoing are self-created and can only be removed by oneself. They exist nowhere except in the mind, and although they are directly related to outward things and influence outward circumstances, they have no real existence in those things themselves. The root cause of our suffering is our own thinking. This is not to say that it's all in your head and that it isn't real. The meaning or thinking we give an event is what determines how we feel about it. That meaning or thinking is the lens through which we see life from then on. Because of this, we live through a perception of reality, not in reality itself. Your perception of reality is certainly real. We will feel what we think, and our feelings are real. That is completely undeniable. The point is that the outer is moulded and animated by the inner, and it is never the other way around. Temptation does not lie in external objects, but in the mind's desire for them. Sorrow and suffering are not inherent in events or things, but arise from our inner emotional wounds and an undisciplined attitude towards those events and things. A mind disciplined by purity and strengthened by wisdom avoids the lusts and desires that bring suffering. To condemn others as evil and to curse at outside conditions as the source of evil increases and does not lessen the world's suffering and unrest. It only increases the pain. The outer world is merely a reflection of the inner. When the heart is pure, all outward things appear pure. All growth and life is from within outward. All decay and death is from without inward. This is the universal law. All evolution proceeds from the inside, and all adjustments must take place within. He who stops striving against others and instead focuses on transforming, regenerating, and developing their own mind conserves energy and preserves themselves. It comes down to where we choose to direct our effort, chasing the fleeting illusions of the outer world that forever slips through our fingers, or focusing on the inner power that shapes that very world. The wise person invests their energy in developing their own consciousness. In doing so, they soon discover that life itself begins to fall beautifully into place. Everything takes on a harmony and kindness they once thought impossible. And as they succeed in harmonizing their own mind, they guide others through consideration and charity into the same blessed state. The path to enlightenment and peace is not gained by controlling others, but by exercising authority over one's own mind and guiding oneself along noble paths. A person's life flows from their heart and mind. Their mind is built from their own thoughts and deeds, and it's within their power to reshape that mind by choosing their thoughts. In this way, a person can transform their life. Let's see how this can be done. Chapter 3. Formation of habit. Every established mental state has nothing to do with outer circumstances. They are only acquired habits of perception, acquired habits of thought, formed through the repeated use of thought. Despondency and cheerfulness, anger and calmness, greed and generosity. Every state of mind is a habit built by conscious choice until it becomes automatic. A thought constantly repeated eventually settles into the mind as a fixed habit, and from these habits, one's life unfolds. It's the nature of the mind to learn through repetition. Repetition, repetition, repetition. A thought that seems difficult to hold at first becomes, through constant practice, natural and easy to maintain. When a boy begins to learn a trade, he can barely handle his tools, much less use them skillfully. But through long repetition and steady practice, he eventually works with perfect ease and confidence. Likewise, a mental state that first seems impossible to realize can, through perseverance and practice, become built into the character as a natural and spontaneous condition. This ability is the key to salvation, the open door to perfect freedom through self-mastery. Just as a person has the power to create harmful habits, they equally have the power to build habits that are good and life-giving. Here is a point that needs clarification. It's commonly said that it's easier to do wrong and to sin than to do right and be virtuous. Even the Buddha once said, "Bad deeds and deeds that bring harm to oneself are easy to do. What is good and beneficial is very difficult to do." For humanity as a whole, this is true, but only temporarily, and it's only easier to do wrong than right because of ignorance. When a child is learning to write, it's easy for them to hold the pen incorrectly, and it's hard to hold it properly. This is only due to their lack of understanding, a difficulty that disappears through patient effort and constant practice. In time, it becomes natural and easy to write well, and both unnecessary and uncomfortable to do otherwise. It is exactly the same with the deeper matters of mind and life. To think and act rightly requires steady practice and repeated effort. But the time comes when it becomes natural and easy to think and act rightly, and difficult as well as needless to think or act wrongly. Just as a craftsman becomes skilled through practice, you can become accomplished in goodness. It is purely a matter of forming new habits of thought. When right thinking becomes easy and natural, and wrong thinking difficult and foreign, you have reached the highest virtue, pure spiritual understanding. It's easy for people to sin because they have formed destructive and ignorant habits of thought through constant repetition. The thief finds it difficult to refrain from stealing when the chance appears because he has long lived in thoughts of greed and desire. But this difficulty does not exist for the honest person who has lived in upright and truthful thoughts. Such a person has become so aware of the futility and ugliness of theft that the very idea of stealing never even arises in their mind. Theft may be an extreme example, but I've used it to clearly illustrate the force and formation of habit. Every sin and every virtue comes about in exactly the same way. Anger and impatience are easy and natural to many people because they continually repeat angry and impatient thoughts and actions. Each repetition strengthens the habit, making it more deeply rooted. Calmness and patience can be formed in exactly the same way. By first consciously holding calm and patient thoughts and then living in them until they become second nature. When this happens, anger and impatience fade away forever. It is in this manner that every wrong thought may be expelled from the mind, every false act overcome, and every sin ultimately conquered. The author Joe Dispenza repeatedly refers to the same idea known as Hebb's law, which states that nerve cells that fire together wire together. If you repeatedly identify with the same thoughts, you repeatedly activate the same nerve cells, then each time they turn on, it will be easier for them to fire in unison again. These clusters of nerve cells form long-term relationships and organize themselves into fixed patterns of activity, becoming hardwired through repetition. The more these neural circuits fire in the same way, the more automatic they become. Eventually, the repeated thought, emotion, or behavior turns into an unconscious habit. When you live in constant reaction to your environment, your surroundings begin to shape your mind so deeply that your habitat becomes your habit. If you keep thinking the same thoughts, feeling the same emotions, and doing the same things, you will hardwire your brain into a limited pattern, one that simply mirrors the boundaries of your current reality. But if you can master suffering, you can just as easily master joy. Chapter 4. Doing and Knowing. Let a man realize that his entire life, everything he experiences and creates, begins in the mind. Let him realize that the mind is a combination of habits which he can, by patient effort, modify to any extent, and over which he can therefore gain complete ascendancy, mastery, and control. When one grasps this truth, they hold the key to their own freedom. But freedom from life troubles, which are in truth the troubles of the mind, doesn't come suddenly from outside. It grows gradually from within. Every hour and every day, the mind must be trained to think pure thoughts and to hold calm, balanced attitudes in situations where it would normally react with negativity or passion. Like a sculptor shaping rough marble, the one who seeks to live rightly must work steadily on the raw material of their mind until it reflects the beauty of their highest ideals. To reach such mastery, it is necessary to begin at the lowest and easiest steps, and progress naturally to greater challenges. This law of growth, progress, evolution and unfoldment by gradual and ever ascending stages applies everywhere, in every department of life, and in every human accomplishment. Where it is ignored, total failure will result. Your positive change must come gradually. It can only happen by steadily directing balanced, consistent mental energy toward it, by asking the higher power to guide you in the best way, and by gently turning your attention away from the unhealthy thoughts that have been running through your mind unnoticed, and focusing instead on healthier, life-giving ones. We all accept this law when learning a trade, studying, or pursuing business, but most people ignore it when it comes to developing virtue, understanding truth, or living rightly. That's why so few ever embody true wisdom or spiritual knowledge. Many believe that the higher life can be gained by reading or adopting certain philosophies, but this is a mistake. The higher life is not about what we believe or discuss or read about or preach or dogmatize. It is about how we live, in thought, in word, and in deed. What are we putting into practice? Knowledge is not power. Knowledge is potential power. It becomes power when you put it into practice. A mere belief doesn't make it true in your life. What we are concerned with is how you can make it your own experience. The smaller lessons must be mastered before the greater can be understood. Practice always comes before real knowledge. A teacher never attempts to explain abstract mathematical laws at the very start. They start with a simple problem. Let the student attempt it, and only after many trials and successes do they reveal the deeper principles behind the work. The same is true when learning a trade. The apprentice is not at first taught the principles of mechanics, but a simple tool is put in his hands, and he is told how to use it correctly. He is then left to do it by effort and practice. As he succeeds, more and more difficult tasks are set before him, until after several years of practice, he is prepared to study and grasp the principles of mechanics. In a properly governed household, a child is first taught obedience and good behaviour under all circumstances before being told why these things matter. No parent would try to teach moral philosophy before teaching discipline and respect. And so it is with the spiritual life. Practice always comes before understanding. You cannot know virtue until you live it. Maybe you take an interest in honey. You could talk about it, study the intricacies, read every book, but you will not know honey until you have tasted honey. To master virtue completely is to know truth completely. Virtue can only be known by doing. Truth is discovered through the daily and hourly practice of right thinking and right action, starting with the small lessons and working up to the great ones. A child patiently and obediently learns his lessons at school by constantly practicing, ever exerting himself until all failures and difficulties are surmounted. And in the exact same way, the child of truth, undaunted by failure and made stronger by difficulties, applies himself to right doing in thought and action. As one becomes firmly established in virtue, the mind opens naturally to the knowledge of truth, a knowledge that brings deep peace, strength and rest. Chapter 5. First Steps in the Higher Life. Since the path of virtue is also the path of knowledge, and because the great universal principles of truth can only be understood once we've mastered the simpler foundational steps, how should a seeker of truth begin? How does one who aspires to bring order to the mind and purity to the heart which is the fountain and repository of all the issues of life, learn the lessons of virtue? How does one build inner strength and destroy ignorance, thereby freeing themselves from the sufferings of life? What are the first steps? How are they learned, practiced and mastered? The beginning lies in overcoming the wrong mental conditions that are easiest to correct, those that most commonly block spiritual progress, while also developing the basic domestic and social virtues of everyday life. To make this easier to understand, I have grouped the first 10 steps of the higher life into 3 lessons. The first lesson is discipline of the body, which includes step 1, idleness or laziness, and step 2, self-indulgence or gluttony. The second lesson is discipline of speech, including step 3, slander, step 4, gossip and idle talk, step 5, abusive or unkind speech, step 6, frivolous or irreverent speech, and step 7, critical or fault-finding speech. And the third and final lesson, discipline of tendencies. Step 8, unselfish performance of duty. Step 9, unswerving rectitude, moral integrity. And step 10, unlimited forgiveness. The first 2 set of faults, of the body and of the tongue, are so named because they express themselves physically and verbally. But it must be clearly understood that they all originate in the mind. They are inner states of disorder expressed outwardly through the body and the tongue. The presence of such chaotic tendencies is proof that the mind is still in darkness regarding the true meaning and purpose of life. Their removal marks the beginning of a steadfast, virtuous, and enlightened life. But how shall these vices be overcome and eradicated? We must first, and at once, check and restrain their outer expression by stopping the unworthy act or word before it happens. This will stimulate the mind to watchfulness and reflection until, by repeated practice, it will come to see the deep, hidden motives from which such actions arise. Once these inner causes are recognized, they are naturally, entirely abandoned. Make it a habit to ask yourself, what is going on inside me at this moment? That question will point you in the right direction. But don't analyze, just watch. It will be seen that the first step in mastering the mind is to overcome laziness or indolence, because this is the easiest place to begin. And until this is accomplished, the other steps cannot be taken. Clinging to laziness forms a complete barrier to the path of truth. Laziness shows itself as giving the body more ease, comfort, and sleep than it truly needs, as well as procrastinating and avoiding and neglecting those things which ought to receive immediate attention. This condition must be overcome by rousing up the body at an early hour, training the body to action, giving it just the amount of sleep it requires for complete recuperation, and by doing promptly and vigorously every task, every duty, no matter how small, as it comes along. On no account should food or drink be taken into bed, and lying in bed once awake, indulging in ease and daydreaming is a habit that weakens promptness, willpower, and clarity of mind. Nor should you attempt to think deeply while lying in bed. Clear, strong, and pure thinking is impossible in that half-waking state. A person should go to bed to sleep, not to think, and should rise to think and to act, not to sleep again. The next step is the overcoming of self-indulgence or gluttony. A glutton eats purely for pleasure, without regard for the true purpose of nourishment. Such a person eats more than the body requires and craves rich, sweet, or excessive foods. This undisciplined desire can be mastered by reducing both the quantity and frequency of meals per day, and by choosing a simple and moderate diet. Set regular times for eating and avoid all food outside these times. Late suppers should be abolished, as they are altogether unnecessary and heavy on the body. They promote heavy sleep and cloudiness of the mind. Following this course of discipline quickly brings the once ungoverned appetite under control. As self-indulgence fades from the mind, the body will naturally be drawn toward the foods that match the new state of inner purity. It must be remembered, however, that a change of heart is what truly matters. Any change in diet that does not help purify the heart is futile. When one eats only for pleasure, he is gluttonous and still enslaved by appetite. The heart must be purified of sensual craving and the lust of taste. When the body is well disciplined, when what must be done is done promptly and energetically, when no task or duty is delayed, when early rising has become a delight, when moderation and simplicity are firmly established, when one feels content with whatever food is put before him, no matter how plain or little, and the craving for gustatory pleasure is at an end, then the first two steps in the higher life are accomplished. The first great lesson in truth is learned, and the foundation of a poised, self-controlled, and virtuous life is laid. The next stage of self-mastery is the discipline of speech. Here are the 5 steps to be learned. Each refines the way you speak and by extension, the way you think. Because the speech reveals the hidden movements of the mind, just as smoke reveals the presence of fire. Number 1. Overcoming slander. Slander consists of inventing or repeating unkind or false reports about others, exposing or exaggerating the faults of others or of absent friends, and speaking with malice and insinuation. Slander is born from thoughtlessness, cruelty, insincerity, and untruthfulness. The person who aims to live the right life will begin by restraining the cruel word of slander before it leaves the lips, and then go deeper to correct and eliminate the insincere thought that gave rise to it. They will refuse to vilify, mock, or defame anyone. They will refuse to disparage or condemn the absent friend, whose face he has so recently smiled into, or whose hand he has shaken. They refuse to say of another that which they would not dare say to their face. They come to think sacredly about the character and reputation of others, dissolving those wrong conditions of mind which give rise to slander. Number 2. Overcoming gossip and idle talk. Idle speech includes gossiping about the private lives of others, talking merely to fill silence, to just pass away the time, or engaging in shallow, aimless, and irrelevant conversation. An ungoverned condition of speech is the outcome of an undisciplined mind. The virtuous person restrains their tongue and learns how to govern their speech as they would their thoughts. They will not allow their words to run idly, aimlessly, or foolishly, but will make their speech strong and pure. And when they have nothing meaningful to say, they are content to remain silent. Number 3. Overcoming abusive and unkind speech. The one who abuses, accuses, or condemns others has wandered far from the right path. To hurl harsh words and insults is to fall into deep folly. When a person is inclined to abuse, curse, and condemn others, they should pause, restrain their tongue, and look within themselves. For what they condemn outside themselves often mirrors something unresolved within. The person of virtue refrains from all quarrelling and abusive language. They use words that are useful, necessary, pure, and true. Number 4. Overcoming frivolity or irreverent speech. Light and thoughtless chatter, light and frivolous talking, the repeating of crude jokes, the telling of vulgar stories, disrespectful words spoken for the passing excitement of a momentary laugh, weakens dignity and respect. Such speech sacrifices the sacredness of life for a fleeting moment of amusement. When high regard towards others and the giving of respect where respect is due are abandoned, virtue is abandoned. When modesty, significance, and dignity disappear from one's words and behaviour, truth itself becomes hidden. Even in youth, an attitude of disrespect is degrading, but when it appears among elders or teachers and preachers, then it is indeed a pitiful sight. And when this is imitated and followed after, then the blind are leading the blind, and they are leading others astray. The virtuous person speaks earnestly and with reverence. They will think and speak of the absent as they would think and speak of the dead, tenderly and sacredly. They guard against thoughtlessness and avoid sacrificing dignity for a passing moment of superficial laughter. Their humour will be pure and innocent, their voice gentle and musical, and their words graceful and filled with sincerity. As they learn to conduct themselves in this way, their soul will be filled with grace and sweetness. Their speech becomes a reflection of inner truth. Number 5. Overcoming criticism and fault-finding. This final vice of the tongue expresses itself in constantly picking at small faults and arguing over trivial things based on groundless suppositions or beliefs. Life is too short and too real, and sin, sorrow, and pain are not cured by continually complaining, fault-finding, and having heated disagreements, especially not over trivial matters. The one who is always on the watch to catch at the words of others in order to contradict and dispute them has yet to reach the higher way of holiness, the truer life of self-surrender. But the one who guards their own speech, softening it, purifying it, will find serenity and strength. They conserve their energy, maintain their composure of mind, and preserve within themselves the spirit of truth. When the tongue is tamed and wisely subdued, when selfish impulses and unworthy thoughts no longer rush to the tongue. When the speech has become harmless, pure, gentle, gracious and purposeful, and no word is uttered but in sincerity and honesty, then are the 5 steps to virtuous speech accomplished, and the second great lesson in truth is learned and mastered. And now some will ask, but why all this discipline of the body and restraint of the tongue? Surely the higher life can be realized without so much strenuous labour, such incessant watchfulness. No, it cannot. In both the material and the spiritual, nothing of worth is achieved without work, and the higher cannot unfold until the lower is fulfilled. Can a carpenter build a fine table before learning how to use a hammer and chisel? And can a man fashion his mind in accordance with truth before he has overcome the slavery of his body? Just as one must first learn the alphabet before grasping the subtleties of language, one must first learn the ABCs of right conduct before comprehending the deeper subtleties of the soul. As for the labour involved, does not the youth joyfully and patiently submit themselves to a 7-year apprenticeship in order to master a craft? And do they not, day by day, carefully and faithfully carry out every detail of their master's instructions, looking forward to the time when, perfected through obedience and practice, they shall be themselves a master? Or consider the artist, the musician, the athlete, or the craftsman. Who among them attains excellence without giving their whole life to it? If one willingly labours for years to master wood, canvas, or sound, how much more willing should one be to labour for the mastery of truth itself, the highest art of all? The one who says, "The path you've pointed out is too difficult. I must have truth without labour, salvation without effort," that one will not find their way out of the confusions and sufferings of the surface self. They will not find the calm, well-fortified mind and wisely ordered life. Their love is for ease and enjoyment, and not for truth. But the one who, deep in their heart, truly loves truth and aspires to know it, will find no labour too great, no discipline too demanding. They will embrace it joyfully, persevere through difficulty, and in time come to know the quiet splendour of wisdom and peace. The discipline of the body and tongue is not based on random choice or personal whim, and it will be more clearly perceived when it's fully understood that all these wrong outward conditions are merely the expressions of wrong conditions of the heart. A lazy body reflects a lazy mind. An ungoverned tongue reveals an ungoverned mind. And the process of correcting the outer, manifested condition is to begin purifying the inner state. Moreover, overcoming these tendencies is only the beginning, a small yet vital part of the process. The ceasing from wrong action leads to and is inseparably connected with the cultivation of right qualities to take its place. The one who overcomes laziness and indulgence is, in truth, developing temperance, self-control, punctuality, and strength of will. They are building the very qualities required for higher attainment. Likewise, as they are overcoming the vices of speech, they are developing the virtues of truthfulness, sincerity, reverence, and kindness, the essential virtues of the awakened heart, and without which the more secluded subtleties of the mind cannot be regulated. The higher stages of conduct and enlightenment cannot be reached. Each time a person triumphs over themselves, their heart expands. They taste a quiet joy that the seeker of pleasure can never know, the deep satisfaction that comes from inner victory. Like a child who delights in solving a problem for the first time, the soul rejoices with every step towards virtue. This joy becomes its own reward, drawing one ever onward toward greater mastery. Now we come to the third lesson of the higher life, the daily practice and mastery of three great foundational virtues. Step 8, unselfish performance of duty. Step 9, unswerving rectitude, moral integrity. And step 10, unlimited forgiveness. Having already calmed and ordered the surface chaos of the mind through the first two lessons, the seeker of virtue and truth is now ready to face deeper work and to control and purify the deeper motives of the heart. Step 8, unselfish performance of duty. Without the right performance of duty, the higher virtues cannot be realized and truth cannot be known. Most people see duty as a burden, a necessary labour to be endured, avoided, or hurried through. This way of regarding duty proceeds from a selfish condition of mind and a wrong understanding of life. All duty should be seen as sacred, and its faithful and unselfish fulfilment as one of the highest rules of conduct. Turn obligation into devotion. All personal and selfish considerations should be extracted and cast away from the doing of one's duty, and when this is done, duty ceases to be heavy and becomes joyful. Duty only feels burdensome to those who secretly crave personal comfort or reward for themselves. Let the person who chafes under their duties look honestly within, and they will find that the weariness comes not from the task itself, but from the selfish desire to escape it. Whoever neglects duty, be it great or small, or of public or private nature, neglects virtue. Whoever rebels inwardly against their responsibilities rebels against the very law of life. When duty is performed with love, carefully, faithfully, and without emotional attachment, selfishness begins to fade, and a great step is taken towards the heights of truth. The virtuous person concentrates their mind on the perfect doing of their own duty, and does not interfere with the duty of another. Step 9. Unswerving rectitude, moral integrity. The 9th step is the practice of unswerving rectitude or moral integrity. This virtue must be firmly established in the mind and so enter into every detail of one's life. All dishonesty, deception, trickery, and misrepresentation must be forever put away. Even the smallest deviation from truth or righteousness is a departure from virtue. We should avoid boastful speech, manipulation, and self-serving half-truths. Only the simple truth should be stated. Even minor deceptions, no matter how apparently insignificant, justified by boastful pride or with the hope of personal advantage, is a state of delusion that clouds the mind and weakens character, and which one should make efforts to dispel. The person of virtue must practice absolute honesty in thought, word, and deed, being exact in their statements, adding nothing and omitting nothing from the actual truth. Through this discipline, the mind grows just and impartial. It begins to see all things fairly, without the distortions of bias, passion, or prejudice. When rectitude becomes a natural way of being, so that all temptation to untruthfulness and insincerity has ceased, then the heart becomes clear and strong. Character is deepened, wisdom expands, and life itself takes on new meaning and power. This is the 9th step fulfilled. The 10th step is the practice of unlimited forgiveness. This means overcoming the sense of personal injury that comes from vanity, pride, and selfishness, and in exercising disinterested charity and large-heartedness towards all. Spite, revenge, retaliation, and resentment are so utterly small and foolish that they should be altogether unworthy of being noticed or harboured. No one who fosters such conditions in their heart can lift themselves above folly and suffering and guide their life aright. Only by casting them out can one see the true way of life. Only by developing a forgiving and charitable spirit can one hope to approach and perceive the strength and beauty of a well-ordered life. Forgiveness is not weakness, but the highest strength. The truly virtuous person no longer feels personal offence, and no feeling of personal injury can arise. They have abandoned retaliation and see no enemies. If other men should regard themselves as their enemies, they will regard them kindly, understanding their ignorance and making full allowance for it, forgiving it completely. When this state of heart is reached, the 10th step is accomplished, and the 3rd great lesson in virtue and knowledge is mastered. Here then, we have the first 10 steps, 3 great lessons in right action and right understanding. I leave them for my readers, who are prepared to learn and master them in their everyday life. There are, of course, still higher disciplines beyond these, deeper refinements of the body and speech, and more expansive virtues yet to be realized, but these are not our concern for now. Once these first steps are fully lived, the seeker will have become so purified, so strong and awake, that they will not be left in darkness about the road ahead. Those of my readers who have completed these lessons will already glimpse the high peaks of truth and the narrow, winding path that leads toward them. They will then choose whether to ascend. This straight path can be walked by anyone, bringing great benefit both to the individual and to the world. Even those who do not yet aspire to full enlightenment will grow in moral strength, clarity, and peace of mind by following it, and even their material life will become more stable, true, and enduring. If there is one who is capable of succeeding and fitted to achieve, it is the one who has abandoned the petty weaknesses and everyday vices of their kind, who is strong enough to rule their body and mind, and who pursues with fixed resolve the path of unswerving integrity and sterling virtue. Chapter 6. Mental Conditions and Their Effects. Without going into the deeper steps and lessons of right living, which are beyond the scope of this short work, a few suggestions about the mental conditions from which all of life arises may be helpful. These insights will benefit those who are ready and willing to go further into the inner realms of the heart and mind, where love, wisdom, and peace await the earnest student of life. All sin is ignorance. It's a condition of darkness and undevelopment. To sin is to miss the mark, like an archer whose arrow falls short of the target. It means to miss the true purpose of human life, to live without wisdom, without awareness, clumsily and blindly, and in doing so, to suffer and to spread suffering. The person who thinks or acts wrongly is, in the school of life, like a pupil who has not yet learned how to think and act correctly, that is, in harmony with law. The student who continually gets their lessons wrong cannot be happy. In the same way, unhappiness cannot be escaped while sin remains unconquered. Life is a series of lessons. Some are diligent in learning them, and they become pure, wise, and altogether happy. Others are negligent and do not apply themselves. They remain impure, foolish, and unhappy. Every form of unhappiness springs from a wrong condition of mind. Happiness belongs naturally to the right state of mind. Happiness is mental harmony. Unhappiness is mental inharmony. While a person lives in wrong conditions of mind, they will live a wrong life and will suffer continually. Suffering is rooted in error. Bliss is inherent in enlightenment. A person can find salvation only through the destruction of their own ignorance, error, and self-deception. Where wrong mental conditions exist, there will be bondage and unrest. Where right mental conditions exist, there will be freedom and peace. Here are some of the leading wrong mental conditions and their disastrous effects upon one's life. Number 1, hatred, which leads to injury, violence, disaster, and suffering. 2, lust, which leads to confusion of intellect, remorse, shame, and wretchedness. Number 3, covetousness or greed, which leads to fear, unrest, unhappiness and loss. Number 4, pride, which leads to disappointment, humiliation and lack of self-knowledge. Number 5, vanity, which leads to distress and mortification of spirit. Number 6, condemnation, which leads to persecution and hatred from others. Number 7, ill will, which leads to failure and troubles. Number 8, self-indulgence, which leads to misery, loss of judgment, grossness, disease and neglect. Number 9, anger, which leads to the loss of power and influence. And number 10, desire or self-slavery, which leads to grief, folly, sorrow, uncertainty and loneliness. These wrong mental conditions are not powers in themselves. They are merely the absence of power, states of darkness and deprivation. Evil has no real power. It is simply ignorance and the misuse of good. The one who hates has failed to learn the lesson of love correctly, and so suffers the consequences. When they finally learn that lesson, the hatred will disappear, and they will see how dark and powerless hatred truly was. This is true of every wrong condition of mind. The following are some of the more important right mental conditions and their beneficial effects upon one's life. Number 1, love, which leads to gentle conditions, bliss and blessedness. Number 2, purity, which leads to intellectual clearness, joy, invincible confidence. Number 3, selflessness, which leads to courage, satisfaction, happiness and abundance. Number 4 is humility, which leads to calmness, restfulness, knowledge of truth. Number 5 is gentleness, which leads to emotional equilibrium, contentment under all circumstances. Number 6, compassion, which leads to protection, love and reverence from others. 7 is goodwill, which leads to gladness and success. Number 8 is self-control, which leads to peace of mind, true judgment, refinement, health and honour. Number 9, patience, which leads to mental power and far-reaching influence. And number 10, self-conquest, which leads to enlightenment, wisdom, insight and profound peace. These right mental conditions are states of positive power, of light, joy and true knowledge. The good person understands life because they have learned to think and act rightly. They know good and evil for what they are. They live in enlightenment, doing only what is divinely right, and are therefore supremely happy. The person caught in wrong mental conditions does not truly know. They are ignorant of good and evil, unaware of themselves and the inner causes shaping their life. They are unhappy and believe other people are entirely the cause of this unhappiness. They work blindly. They live in darkness and fail to see the purposeful order and law that governs existence. Whoever aspires to live the higher life in full, to see with clear vision the true order of things and the meaning of life, Let them abandon all wrong conditions of heart and persevere unceasingly in their practice of good. If they suffer or doubt or feel unhappy, let them look within until they find the cause, and when they find it, let them cast it away. Let them guard and purify their heart, so that each day less evil and more good flows from it. In this way, they will become stronger, nobler, and wiser. Their blessedness will grow, and the light of truth, shining ever brighter within, will dissolve all gloom and illuminate their path. Chapter 7. Exhortation. Disciples of truth, lovers of virtue, seekers of wisdom, you also who are sorrow-stricken, knowing the emptiness of the self-life, and who aspire to the life that is supremely beautiful and serenely joyful, take now yourselves in hand. Enter the door of discipline and know the better life. Put away self-delusion, see yourself as you are, and see the path of virtue as it truly is. There is no lazy way to truth. Whoever would stand upon the mountain summit must climb with effort, pausing only to gather renewed strength. Yet even if the climb is less glorious than the clear summit above, it is still glorious in its own right. Discipline itself is beautiful, and its fruits are sweet. Rise early and meditate. Begin each day with a conquered body and a mind fortified against error and weakness. Temptation will never be overcome by unprepared fighting. The mind must be armed in advance in the silent hour. It must be trained to perceive rightly, to know, to understand. For when right understanding dawns, sin and temptation lose all power and fade away. Right understanding is reached through steady discipline. Truth cannot be reached except through discipline. Patience will increase by effort and practice, and patience will make discipline not a burden but a joy. Discipline seems hard only to the impatient and the lover of self. They avoid it, and so remain restless and confused. But to the lover of truth, discipline is not hard. They find within themselves a vast patience, the strength to wait, to work, and to overcome. Just as the gardener delights in watching his flowers bloom day by day, so the disciplined soul rejoices to see the divine blossoms of purity, wisdom, compassion, and love unfold within the garden of the heart. The undisciplined cannot escape sorrow and pain. A mind left untrained falls helpless before the storms of passion. Therefore, strengthen and prepare your mind, lover of truth. Be watchful, thoughtful, and resolute. Your salvation is at hand. Only your readiness and effort are required. If you fall 10 times, do not lose heart. If you fall 100 times, rise again and continue. Even if you fall 1,000 times, do not despair. Once the right path has been entered, success is certain. so long as the path is never abandoned completely. First comes struggle, then victory. First comes labour, and then rest. First weakness, then strength. At the beginning stands the lower life, with its glare and confusion. At the end, the life beautiful, the stillness and the peace. All common things, each day's events, that with the hour begin and end. Our pleasures and our discontents are rounds by which we may ascend. We have not wings, we cannot soar, but we have feet to scale and climb. Longfellow. The path to power lies within you. All things will be found there. The fight is not between the world and you, but between your ego and your true self. Simply choose to find your true self, and in the end, you cannot lose.